Hello and welcome to the Complete Podcast Network. I'm Anthony Wilson, recording from Los Angeles, California. On today's show, Bud Crawford makes history against Canelo Alvarez, USC improves to 3-0 with a win over Purdue, and lastly, UCLA hits rock bottom against New Mexico. Let's get to it. All right, so last night on Netflix, we had Canelo Alvarez against Bud Crawford for Canelo's 168-pound championship. Canelo was the favorite, but he didn't fight like it. Uh, Bud Crawford emerged victorious by unanimous decision. The official scores were 116 to 112 and 115 to 113 twice, all for Crawford. And he's now the first three division undisputed champion in the four belt era. So he's been the undisputed champ now at 140, 147, and now 168. I scored at 117 to 111 for Crawford, although there were a couple of rounds that could have gone the other way. Um, I'll say, when the fight first was made, I was skeptical about whether it was a legitimate fight or not because of the difference in weight classes, naturally. Um, and then as the fight group got closer, and I looked more into it, I realized that Crawford, I reported earlier this week, I said that Crawford had a 3.5 inch reach. It's actually 4.5 inches. So, they're basically the same height. Crawford is half an inch taller. So basically two 5'7", 5'8" guys. One of them has a significantly longer reach. And, we saw what happened. I picked Canelo to win by just about around the similar scores than what was official and how I had it, but it went the opposite direction. Crawford won it. Canelo, he looks slightly heavier, like thicker. Like I said, he's not really the bigger man. I'm sure he was actually stronger, but with Bud's reach, Canelo really couldn't. Bud's reach and Bud's boxing ability, Canelo couldn't really get close enough consistently to land anything, really hard. I think once again it showed when you start talking about this happened with Pacquiao, right? Pacquiao was at 130, then he fought the one fight at 135 against Diaz, and then he fought, then he jumped up 147 against Oscar. And of course, when that fight was first made, everybody thought, well, this is ridiculous. How can Oscar De La Hoya, at his size, fight Manny Pacquiao at his size? And then as it got closer and closer to the fight, more of the boxing aficionados, they started to kind of change their tune. And I think what Pacquiao's run showed up at those larger weight classes, and much was discussed about this at the time, was when you see to make weight in boxing, normally, you have to shed weight, and that takes a lot out of you to do that. So in the case of someone like Pacquiao at 130 pounds, I think his last fight at 130 was against Marquez, their second fight. I think Pacquiao weighed like 145 pounds in the ring, right? Something like that. And then against Diaz at lightweight, his one fight at lightweight, he weighed 100 and I think it was 147 in the ring, right? And so when Pacquiao moved up to welterweight, basically he was just fighting at his natural walking around weight without having to kill himself to make weight. So when he gets in the ring, he's fresh, And I think the same thing happened with Crawford, fighting at 168 against Spence in his last fight at welterweight. I was two fights before this one. He weighed 165 pounds in the ring, so he rehydrated up to 165. And then against Madrimov in his one fight at 154, in his last fight, he rehydrated up to 170. So, once again, you have a situation where maybe they're facing someone who weighs more in the ring than them on that night and has been at that weight class longer. But that person probably had to tax themselves to shed weight to make that weight. And, Bud Crawford didn't have to do that. So he's just out there, he's out there fresh. He feels good. He didn't have to kill himself to make the weight. He just basically just all he had to do was just train. He didn't have to lose weight to make weight more than likely. So, um, I think that plays a big factor when this type of stuff happens, and people don't consider that enough. That it's actually it's something of an advantage for the so-called smaller fighter when that they don't have to shed weight. They don't have to take that extra bit of effort that it takes, which takes a lot, to shed weight. You can just basically like I said, just train for the fight, and make sure their conditioning is right, make sure their body is right. But they don't have to drain themselves to make weight. Um, I would say that Bud Crawford now, and I said in my fight preview that if he wins, you have to put him up there, with at least a Floyd Mayweather. You know, maybe he doesn't have the resume of Mayweather as far as all the guys, the Hall of Famers and stuff that Mayweather beat. But as far as quality of fighter, I would say that anybody under 5'10", whoever fought between 100 and, and these, that the 140 through, 160, like, Crawford's not really a 168 pounder. He moved up in weight to get this bag and make history. But I'm talking about of course, there's Ray Robinson. I don't even include him in it because he's just completely in a different tier. And then, there's Ray Leonard, there's Mayweather, there's, Pacquiao. Pacquiao's like, he became a star at featherweight, right? But really, Pacquiao's smaller than those guys. But, yeah, if you think of just like Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather, I put Leonard on a slightly higher tier than Floyd. And Leonard was 5'10". So I say any welterweight or anybody ever fought at 140, 147, 154, and they were, under 5'10", Terrence Crawford is giving them problems. That includes Floyd. He's that good. And the thing about Crawford is that what I was basically alluding to in my fight preview is that you have to be in order to do something like what Crawford did last night. You basically have to have like a superpower. Like you have to have you have to be a supernatural athlete, like a Pacquiao or Mayweather or a Leonard, or you have to have tremendous punching power or something like that. And Bud doesn't have that. He's a superhero without superpowers. And when I was younger, and I was writing about boxing for this fight blog called The Rumble, and Bill Simmons he had written something about Jason Kidd. He was saying, like, do you know how good Jason Kidd has to be to have the impact that he has without being able to shoot? Jason Kidd's someone who he ended up becoming, like, I think when he retired, he was like top 10 all time in threes. But really, Jason Kidd, he improved in that regard, but really Jason Kidd's someone who was natural. He couldn't shoot. He didn't have a good looking jumper. He ended up being a decent 3-point shooter and played long enough to compile enough a bunch of threes, but he wasn't a natural shooter by any means. But he still had an incredible impact. And Bill Simmons was saying, do you know how good you have to be at everything else to make up for the fact that you can't really do the most basic thing that you can do in basketball, which is shoot the ball? And so I wrote a piece for the Rumble where I basically piggybacked off of that. And I talked about Juan Manuel Marquez. Juan Manuel Marquez was like that, where he wasn't an exceptional athlete. He wasn't a big puncher. Uh, there was nothing physically about him that stood out, but he was just a brilliant tactician, a brilliant counterpuncher, incredible heart, incredible bravery, and that's what made him. That's what made him great. And I think at the time, the person who hired me, Dave Larzalera, we called him Large. That's what he went by, Large. Um, he liked the idea, and he brought up. I think it was him who brought up Greg Maddox. It might have been me. One of us though. We brought up Greg Maddox and how Maddox was like that. I mean, but Maddox, and I would compare Crawford more to make this cross-sport analogy. I compare him more to Maddox um, than Kidd, because Kidd not being able to shoot was like a glaring weakness. Maddox didn't have any glaring weaknesses, but he also he didn't have overpowering stuff. He was just a great. His command and his control was just so good, and that's more like who Bud Crawford is like. He doesn't have he's not he's a good athlete, but not a great athlete. He's been a good puncher, not a great puncher. He has good hand speed, but not exceptional hand speed. But he's just such a well-rounded, complete fighter. You know, I mean, it's like Mayweather is actually more like a Jason Kidd, because Floyd's hands. Now Floyd was a puncher. Don't get me wrong. 30 and 35. But by the time he got to 40 and 47 and 54, you don't really have to worry about him hurting you so much most of the time. So that was kind of like he was kind of like a Jason Kidd in that sense, especially with him having those brittle hands that he had. And so, um, yeah, I think that I think Crawford he has no holes in his game. He's just a completely balanced and well-rounded fighter, uh, good at everything, even if he's not great at any single thing. And like I said, good athlete, and his ring IQ. That would probably be if he had a superpower. That's what it would be. He's just so intelligent, such a tactician. Uh, as for Canelo, man, what can I say? He's still rich. He's still a Hall of Famer. But he's now 0-2 against the two best guys he ever fought, Mayweather and Crawford. He wasn't the favorite against Mayweather, but he was a favorite against Crawford. And he basically just got completely, outboxed. Um, you know, like I said, the size difference was overstated. It wasn't much of a size difference. But Canelo, he hadn't fought at 154. I don't know, Canelo's not really, like 168 pounds. If you're 5'8", that's not real. That's not a real. Canelo's really like a middleweight fighting at 168, right? But he hasn't fought at 154 pounds in almost 9 years exactly. September 17th, 2016 was the last time he fought at 154. That was against Liam Smith. Yet he lost to someone last night who only fought at 154 once, and that was in his last fight. So, now also, I have to say, and I guess I won't fall for this trick again. The only time a Latin fighter ever beat a slick black African American fighter in a big fight was when Duran beat Leonard. I can't think of another time when it happened in a big fight. Whitaker, we all know that was the greatest. They call it a draw. Whitaker probably won 9 rounds, if not more, and they called it a draw. That was absurd. Floyd beat Oscar. Hell, Oscar even lost to Shane Mosley twice. I don't know I don't know. I guess you could call it Shane. Shane liked to mix it up, but he had such good, tremendous hand speed. I guess you could call him slick. But you could hit Shane easily though. Even though most people think Oscar won that second fight. Um, yeah, but it pretty much doesn't happen. The Latin fighter never beats the slick African American fighter unless you're Duran, and that's what makes Duran the greatest living fighter. That he was able to beat Ray Leonard. And then something funny happened. So, the fight was live on Netflix, and so I don't know. Somehow, my feed got like 20 minutes behind because I was scoring the fight, and it was the seventh round, and I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there, watching. I'm scoring, and I get a notification on my phone that says, I pick up my phone. I look. It says Terrence Crawford's from ESPN. Notification from ESPN. It says Terrence Crawford stuns uh, Canelo Alvarez. Like a what? And I'm thinking, okay, maybe my feed is a little bit behind. Is there about to be a knockout that happens? And then I got a notification of a tweet from Lake Show Yo, and it said that you know Bud rocked Canelo, and I'm thinking to myself, is there a knockout that's supposed to happen? That's about to happen like any second here? And it turns out I guess my feed was like 20 minutes. I don't know how I got like 20 minutes behind, but the fight was over and I was still watching the seventh round, thinking it was live. And so I fast forwarded to the end and saw the noise going to the scorecards, and Crawford had won. And then I just fast forwarded back to where I was and finished scoring it. You know, um, so but that was just kind of funny. And actually, though, I like knowing what happens. It's like it relaxes me. Um, but yeah, man, shout out to Crawford. Uh, Made the most money he's ever made in his life. He should never go broke after the money that he made tonight. And for Canelo, or last night, and for Canelo, he just adds to his fortune. You know, so um, congrats to both of those men, but especially Crawford because he made history and he's firmly entrenched in the all-time great category. All right, so transitioning last night, USC. They were on the road at Purdue. It was the first time USC has faced Purdue since 1998. That was Carson Palmer versus Drew Brees, and Drew Brees' first college start. I think it was his first college game. One of the two. And so USC won the game last night, 33-17. I think they also won in '98. Yeah, but they won last night, 33-17. Jaden Maava was 17-28, 282 yards. He also had 7 carries for 10 yards and a rushing touchdown. Jacoby Lane had 3 catches for 115 yards. Makai Lemon had 5 catches for 63 yards. Wayman Jordan had 18 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. USC had 5 sacks. USC looks, they look good out there, bro. They look well coached. And I think my favorite thing is that they look like they're a well balanced team. They got skill position players are playing well. Maava looks great. The offensive line looks nice and professional. The defense, obviously, year 2 under Danton Land, they're much improved. So, but they're not a overpowering team. Like I said, they lost some guys to the portal. Lost 3 receivers to the portal who are playing well, in their new homes. Um, so not the most, you know, like I said, I mean, it's 2026 next year. That's going to be the year when the recruiting class comes in. And so maybe we'll get to the point where, like, okay, USC is not just well balanced and stacked, not well balanced and well coached, but they're stacked. Um, but I think I think what's happened here is that if you go back and you look to Lincoln Riley, um, when he first got here, the cupboard was pretty much bare, and he went in the transfer portal. Obviously, the big domino to fall was him being able to bring Caleb Williams with him, right? Then he goes in the portal and he gets Travis Dye. He gets Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison just won the Biletnikoff, and he gets him to come. Travis Dye, who had been a star at Oregon the year before, he gets those guys to come in, and that team was what, I think they were 10-1 or 11-1, going into the Pac-12 championship game, and we all know what happened. It fell apart, and they lost the bowl game also. But yeah, he decided that was an all-time job that he did in the transfer portal his first year here, and I think that he kind of wasn't able to replicate that the last 2 years to the same degree, and now this year though, I think this is like the bet like it they could have been more, like I said, Zach Branch and Kyron Hudson and Deuce Robinson. They transferred after last year. Those guys would have. Once again, it takes time. It's really not until you're like a junior that you're like a fully formed college football player, and that's what you're seeing. You got some guys who now they've been in the program, and they've matured, and they're just it's like everything is sort of clicking into place now. But they'd be more talented, and people would probably fear them more if they still had a. But I guess it really doesn't work like that anyway because Deuce and Zach and Kyron, they got to go and be the man at their new places. Where instead here they'd be playing up behind Jacoby and Mackay. But yeah, I think it's just that it takes time. It takes time when you come in and the talent is not there. You got to get your own guys in there and give them time to grow and give them time to be in the program. And that's what happened. And USC just looks way more uniform, this year, and well put together. And I think it just takes time to do that. Next week they'll be next week is Michigan State. It's at the Coliseum. So as Gary Danielson was saying yesterday, the schedule it's not a really tough schedule as far as like the name brand schools. But Notre Dame is 0-2 now. So, but last year really on paper was a tougher schedule. This year it's not as bad, but it's a bunch of teams that are still dangerous. But it seems that if USC is right, USC should beat. But we just have to see how far USC has come, this year. But things are definitely pointing up. I would have to say, but it's still a lot of season to go. So we'll have to see what happens. Now across town, UCLA, they're just a complete dumpster fire under Deshaun Foster. You can't blame him because Chip Kelly, he kind of just left them hanging when he left for Ohio State, and Deshaun was just kind of thrown to the fire. He was not ready to be a head coach, in college football at a Big Ten school. Of course, Deshaun Foster was a great player for UCLA. UCLA back Deshaun's freshman year, they went 10-2 and lost the Rose Bowl. The year before that, they also went 10-2, and won the Cotton Bowl. So this is back in the Bob Toledo, Cade McNown days, it just couldn't seem further away. You know, they're 0-3 now, with 2 blowout losses at home. Week 1 they lost 43-10 against Utah, and last night they lost 35-10 against New Mexico. Sandwich in between there, they lost 30-23 at UNLV. And it's crazy, man. Rose Bowl's almost empty. And I look back, I remember, bro, in 2005, I always say this. The day that USC played UCLA at the Coliseum, this was Reggie's Heisman year. This was the 34th of 34 straight wins for USC. Of course, the next game for USC was the Rose Bowl loss to Texas. And Reggie ran wild. I think he had like 230 yards in the first half or something like that. And it was such a wipeout. He barely played in the second half. USC won, I think it was 66-19. And it was a hell of a day. I remember I took the SAT for the second time that day at LA High, and I ran into my classmate Bruce Linus, a Murphy legend. I ran into him, and we greeted each other. And then it was just such a beautiful day. I remember, I was 17 years old. And then I went to, just went home, watched the game. And then that was the year that even UCLA was good that year. Well, I mean, obviously USC was like no college team had ever, they were at the ultimate height. No team before or since has exceeded the height that they were at that very moment in college football. And like I said, even UCLA was good. They went 10-2 that year. That was the Carl Durrell years, and that was the Maurice Jones-Drew, who went on to have an exceptional NFL career. Mercedes Lewis, who I know last year at least, I think he was still in the league at tight end. Both of those guys were. I don't know. MJD he didn't go first. I think Mercedes did though. And they also had Drew Olson. So I just think back to those days, man. That was such a good time in LA for college football. And now UCLA is just so bad. But at least USC is starting to trickle upwards. But I don't know what UCLA is. They got to get a real coach. That's nothing against Deshaun. Like I said, he was just thrown into the fire. It's like if Lincoln Riley just randomly quit, and then you had to throw. This kind of happened a couple of years ago when they fired Clay Helton, and then Dante Williams had to come in and be the interim. It's like you're not ready to be a head coach until you're ready to be a head coach. You can't just randomly throw it into it. That's why most of the time the guy who's the interim, it doesn't work out because he's not really ready. And then so. Yeah, they got to get a real call. I was saying it's like if Lincoln Riley just retired, or quit or left the NFL randomly, and then USC didn't really have they didn't have a chance to interview, like the real interview hiring process that it had passed already for that year or for that off season, and they had to just go, okay, well, who are we gonna do? Find okay, Deshaun, he's a legend of the program. We'll throw him in there. It's like if USC did that with, I don't know who's on the staff right now, anybody who played for the team, but imagine Dwayne Jarrett was the wide receivers coach or something like that. and Lincoln Riley ups and leaves, and then it's like, we don't know, and then it's like all the other candidates have taken jobs and made their decisions. That would have been okay. Dwayne, you're a legend. You be the head coach now. That's basically what it's like. So, that's not really fair to Deshaun. But and then Ia Maliava, He came here from Tennessee, wanted more money. That sucks. And then Dante Moore, um, he left when Chip Kelly left, and he's at Oregon, doing much better. So I don't know what to tell you, except I don't know. Once again, I'm not the type of person. I'm not. I didn't go to either one of these schools. I'm just a guy from the city who, I go way back as far as this stuff goes. Same thing in basketball. I go way back. I remember, who the big, uh, the major recruits were in the city going back 20 plus years. You know, uh, and it means something to me. But you know, um, I don't know. I don't. You know, if you went to USC, you're happy that UCLA is struggling like this. But I didn't go to USC, and I didn't go to UCLA, so I'm just somebody who I support the LA teams. It doesn't do anything for me to see UCLA be bad. Like Mitch and Shane are different. Mitch and Shane, they're UCLA guys. They didn't go there, but they're UCLA guys, and they basically they act like screw USC. I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy because I didn't actually go to USC. So why would I do that? Okay. Um, and then last but not least, I just wanted to say, uh, Florida. They lost again yesterday, and I don't know, man. Um, I don't know what they're gonna do. I do know that Lane Kiffin, Florida lost to LSU, so Florida now is uh, is 1-2 after starting the season ranked, and I know Paul Feinbaum said that Billy Napier. It basically says it's only a matter of time before Billy Napier is out of there. And Lane Kiffin, he went to Ole Miss, and he was at FIU first, and he went to Ole Miss, and he's basically rebuilt his name and rebuilt his image and his brand as a head coach. And I don't know, man. For me, it just makes sense, Uh, like he can be at Ole Miss for the rest of his career and win 9, 10 games every year, and okay, that'd be great, I guess. Or he can go to Florida and he can be in the national championship conversation again and possibly bring Florida back to national prominence. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he's had so many. I mean, the guy was. I mean, what a career he's had to still not even be that old. He's only like 50 years old. You go all the way back, and of course, he started. He was he's an offensive assistant for USC in the peak days. Uh, and then he goes and he gets the. It was the Tennessee job first or the Raiders job first. I forget. He gets fired, but I think he left Tennessee to take the. Did he left? I think he was the Raiders first. Then he was at Tennessee. Then he left Tennessee to take the USC job. Uh, he gets fired at USC. Like he got fired at the Raiders, and then he um, goes to Alabama to be the offensive coordinator there. Then he leaves. He goes to FIU, and then now he's at Ole Miss. So he might feel like, bro, I've had enough head coaching jobs. I'm here at Ole Miss. If I win 9 games a year at Ole Miss, I'll never have to worry about having to get another job. You know, and maybe he's that type. Maybe that's how he feels about it. But it would excite me to see Kiffin uh, give it one more shot on the biggest possible stage. I think that would be really fun to see, man. So we'll see what happens with that. But right now, it's not looking good for Florida. Uh, you know, I know Urban Meyer hates to see it. I know the old ball coach, Steve Spurrier, he hates to see it. Uh, and so hopefully it gets better there because, college football is better when Florida is good. They're one of those premier programs, the colors, the gator, the whole nine. So, yeah, bro, hopefully things pick up for them. All right, so before I get out of here, just a reminder to hit that subscribe button next to the Complete Podcast Network and to follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at TC Pod Network. You can also send feedback and mailbag questions to Complete Lakers Podcast at gmail.com. I am out.